Afternoon. Thank you, Andrea, and thank you to the Tennessee Nonprofit Alliance team. I'm so happy to be with all of you. Today, I hope everyone can hear me all right. Today, I am talking about one of my favorite things about working in the nonprofit sector, and it's really donor engagement and the different ways that we can not only bring people into our organization and support our mission, but keep them engaged. I have a series of slides. I am not going to speak to each slide and verbatim, but the team at TNN will share the deck. So if there's other notes or if you want to listen instead of read, we can do that over the next 45 minutes. And we will also, I will do my best to keep up with the chat, but certainly we'll make time at the end of our discussion for questions. All right, so let me pull up my deck. Okay, hopefully that is visible there. All right, let me get this. All right, hopefully that's clear for everyone. All right, so today we're going to talk about engaging your donor base for really a lasting impact and for sustained growth for your nonprofit organization. A little bit about me. I have had a role in the nonprofit sector and in development for more than 20 years, but my experience has really been varied. I started my career in higher education, worked for the Memphis Grizzlies and actually ran the Memphis Grizzlies Foundation for 12 seasons. So was very involved with the grant making and the community partnerships there. Moved on to AutoZone, where I was the director of community relations and communications. And so was also involved with the delivery of grants to organizations throughout the Mid-South, and then moved into a development role. And for the last 7 years, I've been in development roles, first with Church Health and now with the Campbell Clinic Foundation, and development, as it is for most executive directors, a very significant part of my day-to-day and my responsibilities. But I think what's unique about my experience is that I've had roles in very different industries, different organizations, and I've really touched all sort of parts of that donor journey, as well as worked among many other people as a board member with different types of organizations. And so I've been able to see what works well, and some things that after you throw spaghetti against the wall a few times, you realize you need to move on to a different strategy. And then a little bit about the Campbell Clinic Foundation. I have a feeling that many of you on the call, especially those who are in the Memphis or West Tennessee area, are familiar with Campbell Clinic. Hopefully not because you've had an injury or you've been in pain, but the Campbell Clinic Foundation has actually been in existence for more than 75 years. But our responsibility is to support surgeon education, orthopedic research, and community outreach. We oftentimes work behind the scenes to really ensure that the Campbell Clinic and orthopedic practices and professionals around the world can deliver excellent patient care and really enhance mobility and well-being. Our signature program, really how we made an international name for ourselves, is that orthopedic surgery residency program that was actually created by Dr. Campbell in 1924. So this is our centennial year, and it gives us an opportunity to not only revisit sort of what we've accomplished, but also where we want to go in the second century of teaching healthcare professionals so that ultimately more people can have lifelong mobility. All right, so today, what we're going to discuss is really how we engage donors and how we sustain long-term relationships. My feeling is that, this is really a 24/7, 365 responsibility, and you never know where opportunities to network and to build relationships may surface. But the key in this is that even if you are a party of one, if you are a one-person development team or you're a one or two-person nonprofit organization, you can adopt and adapt these different tactics and these different processes to your organization. I think the one important thing to think about as we step through this presentation and this discussion is that you already have a support team Now, they may not all be on your payroll. They may not all be on a committee for you, but there are other engaged people who really believe in what you do. And one of the keys is looking at it and saying, what do I need to do in your respective roles? And then how can you enlist and empower other people to help you build those strong relationships that ultimately result in a contribution to your organization? All right, so we're going to talk about a number of different things, the stages of the donor journey, building those relationships, communication strategies and the variety of ways to do that, engagement tactics, and then also retention and stewardship. One thing, actually, before we go into this, is that I do want to also think about your audience. And not all donors are the same. And one thing that I have learned in my journey, whether I'm on the grantor side, responsible for making large corporate gifts, or if I'm on the grant seeker or the side of the table asking for someone to make a contribution, that is important to know who's across the table, who's receiving my proposal, and making sure that I understand what their interests are and how they may be able to support what we do. So think about your audience as you kind of talk through this discussion today. All right, so the first thing is really looking at how people become a donor. And oftentimes they're in the process before they may even know it. The first is really looking at awareness. So anytime you are putting something out on the communication waves, if you are hosting a program, if you are facilitating a tour, or just speaking to a group of people, there's an opportunity to attract a potential donor. They're always listening, and it's an opportunity for you to inform. There's the second stage is when they consider, is this something that I want to support? Is this something that I believe in? And being able to connect your mission with their interests. The third, of course, is a contribution. And regardless if it's, a $5, throw it, or supporting someone, perhaps in a race or in a special event, or if it's a more significant gift, those each donation matters, and it's another way to augment the relationship. And then last but not least, and probably the thing that looks that oftentimes gets pushed to the side is the stewardship, is the ongoing relationship management. One thing that I heard early in my development career was that that it's harder to get a first-time gift than it is to get a gift of renewal, to retain a donor. And if you think about it, once someone has made a gift, you already have their contact information. You know when they made that gift. You probably know what was the prompt. And you may even know a little bit about what caught their attention in the first place. And so armed with that information, there's oftentimes much more than what you would know about someone who doesn't have a history with your organization. And focusing energy, attention, and resources on that stewardship piece is very important. The other thing is that in really moving forward and moving the needle on the donor journey and keeping them involved is scheduling the time, mapping out opportunities to keep them engaged. And if there's nothing else that you get out of this presentation today, it's keeping track of what you're doing. I wish one of the many reasons why it's sometimes hard to do a presentation online like this in a virtual environment is that I can't ask for a show of hands. But I have a feeling that most of you on this call, if asked, do you have donor management software? I'd like to think most of you have some kind of donor management software. But how many of us are really maximizing the capabilities of that donor management software? And I think one of the most important thing is, especially with this donor journey, is to look at how you're tracking interactions, not just gifts, those interactions. And so if you're in line at Kroger and you have a donor behind you, don't forget to put that into the system, because that touch point could mean something for them. and it could certainly mean something for your organization. So how do we build those authentic relationships? Well, I think the first and foremost thing is that you really need to listen. Listen to what got them there. Listen to how they got into your orbit. Listen to who they might know that's already involved. And I think those things aligned is going to help motivate them to support what you do. Look at also at those things, you know, in an organization like mine, we focus on three sort of pillars: education, clinical research, community outreach. A lot of people can't get their head around clinical research. I'm not going to bother them with a long story about, you know, maybe a new study that we have going on or a new medical invention. At the same time, some people are so passionate about preparing surgeons for the challenges of today's healthcare environment that they're not interested in hearing about our foot clinic. So you really being able to match up the stories with the individual, again, thinking about that audience. And that's what really facilitates that authentic relationship and really understanding what's going to move them to support what you do. The other piece is that, you know, sharing success stories, sharing stories about how their contribution moved the needle, how it made a difference. You know, people want to know that their money was put to work, that they can trust how we not only steward their support, but also their financial investment. And so think about how each of these stories is a way to build trust and to reinforce trust. You know, it doesn't take a lot to find a story of some organization that has abused the use of funds, perhaps hasn't kept track of things, and has made a bad name for our nonprofit sector. Any opportunity we have to rebuild trust in our work, our mission, is not only going to help us as individual nonprofit leaders, but it's going to help our sector as a whole. Moving into specific communication strategies. So this is one area. I'm going to go off script for a moment because I think that communication is probably one of the most important things that you can invest your time and your money in as a nonprofit organization. And oftentimes it's the one thing where we have to lobby the hardest to get that into the budget or to increase the budget with our board during that part of the year. The reason I say that is because in this day and age, each audience has a different preference for how they receive information and what they're going to actually read, what they're going to actually absorb, right? And as much as we want to have a strong digital presence and we want to be active on social media, I challenge you to find out exactly how your current donors or most promising donors want to hear from you. One of the things I did last year was I did a survey and focus groups on about 30 of our most consistent donors that we have, non-alumni donors. So people who just heard about us once upon a time and have been consistently contributing to the Campbell Clinic Foundation. And I found out a couple different things. Number one, most of them first started giving because they got a letter in the mail, a letter. The second thing is, among those individuals, none of them use social media. At least they don't use social media to inform their charitable giving. And the third thing is they love stories about a surgeon's relationship with one of their patients. And so when you have those trends, right? I mean, I could hire the best social agency in America and it wouldn't move the needle with this core group of dependable donors. I also found that most of them are over the age of 60. Now we know that plenty of people over the age of 60 use social media, but again, does that inform their charitable giving or their financial decisions? And so, you know, taking time to retrieve this information, get this input, accomplish two things. First of all, a lot of really valuable information about our donors and the people that we need to. Now, if that is sort of a sample, if you will, of potential donors, we need to find comparable donors that have a similar profile. But the second thing is, we don't have to wear ourselves out on, certain communication tactics or certain data necessarily. We need to think about, what do these donors want to hear? What is going to move them to support us? What's going to grab their attention? So all that said, what we may do at the Campbell Clinic Foundation, what our friends in in downtown Memphis might do, or what that superstar agency in another part of the country might do, may not work for each of us. And so I encourage you to take the time to really know your audience. But to that end, once you know your audience, what do you do with that information? So certainly there's a variety of communication channels. And I think everyone here is savvy enough to know that digital media, social, different peer-to-peer campaigns, all of those things are very effective. And I encourage you to pursue a strategy where you can have visibility in lots of different channels, lots of different media. But one thing in terms of really building that engagement and being authentic, there is nothing like the phone. So you all have one of these things. And I will say, in my experience, there is novelty in making a phone call. And I don't mean to belabor this matter, but I truly, truly believe, as I've built relationships as a newcomer to an organization that has a lot of legacy, a lot of history, takes a while to break in, that picking up the phone and really taking the time to ask questions and get to know my donors has probably been the single most effective way to actually bring on new donors and also keep them engaged. And I say phone, most of it is phone calls, but there's nothing like sending a congratulatory text when someone gets published in a journal or someone is recognized, say, by their local organ or local community. But that said, phone. Don't be afraid to use it. Trust me. Email. Email is great because of two main reasons. First, it's a very quick and nimble and cost-effective way to communicate what you're doing. But the other thing is that you can track if people open it. You can see where they clicked. You can see how much time they spent. And if you can't figure out those things, then go find a different email service that delivers that kind of data for you. Because I think that that data can then drive, what are you spending your time on, again, to create the most effective communication and information channels with your potential donors. The third thing, of course, is social media, which is a necessary evil, but definitely one that requires strategy, but also knowing, again, who's your audience, because not all information is worth sharing with your social audience, and being specific, being consistent, and planning ahead. In terms of social media, the one thing that I've learned over the last few years, and certainly with the help of many, many conversations with my colleagues in the communications and marketing space, is standalone social media posts aren't going to get you very far. But if you tag and are deliberate about highlighting your relationships with other organizations or individuals, that shared content can drive followers, drive interest, drive likes, and again, drive trust. Last but not least, events. Now, as a long-time event planner, love getting people together. I'm so happy that events are back after our hiatus earlier this decade. But let's be honest, events are exhausting. And if we're going to put the blood, sweat, and tears into events, whether it's a tour for 4 people or it's a gala for 1,000, make sure you have planned how you're going to drive donor engagement before, during, and after. If you're not doing that, there's really no reason to do those events. Think about who are the people who are attending, What do they want to know? And how could they support you? Maybe not that night or that day, but down the road. So I'll give you an example. In the Campbell Clinic Foundation, we have really one fundraising event each year, and it is a gala or party that we do in the fall. But our team probably facilitates 40 to 50 events throughout the year, but many of them are focused on an educational program, say. Well, I have to think about it and say, okay, we're doing a lecture about the orthopedic spine. Where's the donor piece in that? But the opportunity we see then is how can we engage alumni who have that subspecialty? How can we engage patients who've been beneficiaries of great orthopedic spine care? How can we perhaps inform industry or the orthopedic news or medical news? So we have to kind of think about more broadly how that event, even if it's not a fundraiser, or if it only breaks even so we cover our costs, we have to think about how it can help us strengthen existing relationships or help us find a new pipeline of support to support that piece or to augment that kind of training down the road. I hope that makes sense. But my whole point is that don't do an event just for the sake of events. Don't do an event just to like get people in the room. Make sure there is a call to action and make sure that action is taken prior to, during, or after that event to really make that investment of time worthwhile. The other piece of all these different channels, whether you're on the phone, e-news, print media, make no mistake, letters can go a long way, and never underestimate a remittance envelope. But the truth is, all of these you need to have consistent and clear communication. It may feel in your role that you're saying the same thing over and over and over again, but to the people who are receiving your information, it's only strengthening and improving their understanding of what you do and how they may be able to help, how they can make a difference. So in the era of donor engagement, especially when so many things are chewing at folks' time, there are certainly other ways that you can facilitate donor involvement. The opportunities to really volunteer remotely. And some of it is not even, I mean, what we would say traditional volunteer, but really, again, to help you do what you do. It goes back to who already is in your circle. And can those individuals help you with your social media outreach? Can they help you with virtual events? Might they be able to even help facilitate a donor appreciation? But any of those roles, there are different ways that they can help you. It might even be you can have some ghostwriters for your e-newsletters. It may be that someone else can volunteer and just help you make phone calls, say, prior to or during a campaign to thank individuals for contributing to what you do. But there's a variety of ways that people can help, and it doesn't require them to take up space in your office. The other part is that any kind of donor appreciation is going to matter. Most donors will tell you all the gifts really won't matter. And sometimes they'll even discourage it because they don't want to see your organization spending a lot of money on stuff. They would rather you channel those dollars into your mission. But, you know, even sometimes like identifying individuals who have benefited from your programs, perhaps it's a trustee or a board member, those individuals have given it an opportunity to thank donors, whether in person or over the phone, can go a long way in continuing to build that engagement with individuals who've already made an investment in your organization. One of the ways to that, and I think this is related, is really that peer-to-peer fundraising. A lot of people give, a lot of people show up to things because they just know who already is involved. And again, it boils down to trust. If she's involved or if he's on the board or if he's a host, then they're more inclined to participate themselves. So think about how you can organize peer-to-peer opportunities, just to get more people into your pipelines, and spread the word, help, and again, being clear, being consistent, helping people who don't oftentimes speak for you have clear talking points is going to augment the effectiveness of your peer-to-peer fundraising. And last but not least, storytelling. One of the things that the Campbell Clinic Foundation has done this year is really shore up our success stories. Stories have been collected for probably 10 years, but they were in all sorts of different places, right? And so one of the things we did recently was go through all of our past, it really sometimes helps to have an intern, right? Go through our past newsletters and track all of the individuals whose success stories were reported or highlighted in our newsletters. And we have begun the process of reaching out to find out where they are now. And, some of these patients, they encountered Campbell Clinic or they were part of a research study when they couldn't walk. And now you find out that, they completed a marathon. Now they're lifting their kids over their heads after having a full shoulder replacement. And so we have a lot of things, sort of before and after that are related to health, but so do you. It might be a social service, it might be education, but the success stories out there. And even if you choose 4 for the year, again, be clear, be consistent, show how your work, your mission, not only touched that individual or that family, but it also had the byproduct was improving a community. At the risk of sounding redundant, this retention and stewardship effort really is crucial for sustaining any organization. And like I said earlier, it's easier to keep donors involved than to create a first-time donor. And so really taking the time, scheduling time, that focus time where you're reaching out to existing donors. Don't wait until the last quarter of the year. It might be too late then. It's May. And so now's a great time to just touch base, see how people are doing, but give them an update on what you're doing. And it might be that, and if it's just a party of one for you, think about how you can engage some of your other advocates, some of your other partners in reaching out and connecting with individuals who support your work. Last, as we kind of wrap up some of these things, I did want to just also talk about, some of the other terms. I guess I was just getting a little ahead of myself with my notes. But like I said, knowing what makes people tick. One time I remember someone saying to me that when it comes to donors to an organization, they really fall into 2 different categories. There's the mission people and the party people. I would venture, especially in the post-COVID world, I would say there's 3. I think there's the mission people, I think there's the learning people, and then there's the party people. But regardless of how people came to you, some people are always going to be great for buying that table or buying that sponsorship, but some people just want to learn. They really believe in it because maybe they've had a personal experience or because they have a passion for what you do. But regardless, know what it is and if you don't know, just ask them. How'd you get involved? What keeps you involved? It can be one of the most informative and illusory conversations you'll have. The second thing is, you really just can't understand or underestimate the value of handwritten notes. It takes a long time. I know that some of us have gotten out of practice, and so our handwriting might be a little sloppy. Take your time, write slowly, pretend you're in, Mrs. Smith's 3rd grade handwriting class, but those touch points really do go a long way because, again, there's novelty in them. And then really scheduling time to do this because it will pay off in the long run. All right. The one thing I do want to leave you with before we go into Q&A is some advice that I've actually heard over and over as I've been in the development world. And it's that if you want to ask for money, ask for advice. And if you want advice, ask for money. And I think when you're looking at going forward and communicating with individual donors, especially for major gifts, think about how you can not only enlist their financial support, but also their expertise and their passion, because they may not only end up making a gift to your organization, but also become an ally, a partner to you as a leader in your organization, so that together you can move forward and really get more and more people engaged and committed to sustaining and growing your organization. All right. Okay, well, we will open it up to questions.
All right, everyone. Does anybody have any questions? I'm checking the chat. I do not see any questions in the chat at this time. But I will share, Jenny, that last bit of advice that you just gave around ask for advice and you'll get money, ask for money, you'll get advice. I have heard that, and actually a professor told me or my sister that many years ago, and it has always proven out to be very correct.
Yeah, I find over and over again that some of the best input and ideas that I've received have been when I think I am going to actually walk out with a gift. But if you follow through
Mhm.
with the advice or follow up on what you did with that advice, you will be surprised how that will pay dividends long term.
Mhm. Absolutely. All right, we do have a question in the chat.
Okay.
This question is, how do you gauge the sweet spot between consistent communication and reaching out too much to the point that it's annoying? That's a great question.
That's a great question. um, you know, that is, I think that if people are really feel like they're getting bombarded, if they're hearing too much from you, it it may be more you're projecting onto like we're doing it. And if they are feeling that way, they'll probably unsubscribe.
Mhm.
They may quit giving, but I really think that, we have to keep our organizations, our missions, and our call to action visible. Um, I think too that we have, and so I think more is more generally, and it's important to, if anything, it's that when you do communicate, keep it simple. We've had challenges in saying, oh my gosh, there's like 10 things we want to tell them in this e-newsletter. We have to pick, and then, but we then have to creatively use our website and social media to augment what we put into, say, our e-newsletter. But I think
We
that just keeping it simple, attention spans are shrinking. But if you have something, even if it's highlight 2 or 3 sentences, it can go a long way.
Absolutely, and we do have